everyone, my name is Rachel. Welcome back to my channel. So it is October, it is Halloween season. So you know I had to bust out a dark smoky eye and a vampy lip. And I love this shirt. I got this from Target a couple of years ago and it just like fits this look perfectly. So I am living the Halloween vibe right now, but I have been thinking about some end of the year content that I want to make. It's very weird saying that we are nearing the end of 2023, but here we are. So recently I saw Jess from Peace Love Books post a video about 10 books that you should read before the end of the year. And this is a video idea that she must have done last year because I'm pretty sure she was the one that I got the idea from. So I have done this video before. I will link that up in the cards above, where I talked about 10 books that you need to read before the end of the year. And so today I am back with that same idea, but this time I have 10 completely different books. Basically, these are books that I have read within the last year or so that I think should be top priority on your TBRs. I got a mix of a lot of different things. I've got some romance novels, of course, because I read mostly romance, but I also have books of other genres that I'm so excited about. So without further ado, let's get on into it. The first book that I want to mention is part of a manga series. Now, you might assume that I'm going to bring up Sweat and Soap because you should all know at this point that that is my favorite manga series and is just one of my favorite romances ever. I am obsessed with the couple in that series. But I wanted to bring up a little something different in today's video, and that is Spy Family. I have not talked about this series in a little while. I think it's been a few months since I've read a volume, that's why. But oh my god, guys, no matter what type of books and what type of stories you like to read, I truly feel like there is something for everyone in this series. This is a fairly new series. I think there's only about maybe 10 volumes out so far, so you don't have too much catching up to do. But basically, this is like a found family spy comedy is probably the best way to sum it up. We have Twilight, our main character, Daddy Twilight as I call him because he totally gives that energy. But he is a spy. So for his newest mission, he has to essentially infiltrate this elite private school. In order to do that, he has to have a family so that he looks legitimate, and he needs to have a child that he can enroll in this elite private school. And so he adopts this little girl, Anya, and he finds this woman, Yor, to basically have a marriage of convenience with, a fake marriage, I guess you would say, so that he looks legit. Meanwhile, everyone in this family has secrets that they don't want the others to know about. So Yor is an assassin, and then Anya, the little girl that Twilight adopts, she can read minds. And so what ensues is spy action and comedy and cozy found family vibes. Like I said, there's truly something for everyone, and I have absolutely adored every volume that I have read so far. And I mean, come on, look at that art style, just so unique, and I'm absolutely obsessed. And look at little Anya, she's so freaking cute. So yes, cannot recommend this series enough. Another non-romance book that I would highly recommend to anyone, no matter what kind of books you like to read, is I Must Betray You by Ruthless. This is the first and only book that I've read by this author at this point, and it definitely will not be the last because I am obsessed with her writing and the kinds of stories that she tells. Basically, she explores parts of history that just aren't talked about enough, and she writes historical fiction novels surrounding those topics. So this one takes place in 1989 in Romania, around the end of the Cold War and the fall of the Berlin Wall. And so we have our main character, Christian, who is in Romania, and he gets blackmailed into being an informant for the Romanian government. And we see that so many people that he knows have become informants because they have also been blackmailed by the government. I truly felt like I was in Bucharest with Christian and the other characters. The way that this informant culture was depicted, it just felt so visceral and raw. And I just loved how this author depicted the Romanian people's resilience and strength and hope in this dire time in their history. I just thought that it was perfectly paced, perfectly written and edited. To me, it just read like an instant classic. Next up, we have In the Lives of Puppets by TJ Klune. If you've been following me for a while, you would know that I absolutely adore TJ Klune's writing and his stories. Every book that I pick up by him is usually a 5-star, and I'm just absolutely obsessed. So this is quite the unique story. It's got the vibe of a Pinocchio retelling, but it's also this epic science fiction story about Vic, our main character, who is a human, and he has been raised by Giovanni, who is an android of some kind. And one day, Vic comes across this other android named Hap, who is like the daddy version of Megan, if you've seen that horror movie. With TJ Klune, I think he does an incredible job of writing the characters, because not only is Vic such a lovable main character, but we have Hap, we also have these other robots that are in Vic's life, and they are just the perfect side characters. They truly round out this story, and this adventure that they all go on is insane and amazing and epic. And I just found myself savoring this book. I did not want it to be over because the writing was so good and the story was so captivating. I just love when a truly epic story can also have cozy found family vibes, and that perfectly describes In the Lives of Puppets. So cannot recommend this highly enough. I know I'm saying that about all of these books, but truly, like, these books are incredible. You need to read them. Next up, a recommendation video from me would not be complete if I didn't talk about a Claire Kent book. This time we're talking about Hold, which is book 1 in her like dystopian space romance series. In last year's video, I talked about Haven, which is part of a completely different series. That one's more post-apocalyptic. This one, like I said, is more like science fiction, space, dystopian, all those things. So this one has an insane premise, and I did not know how Claire Kent was going to do it, but I think that she truly nailed it, and my obsession with this story and with this romance knows no bounds. But we have Rihanna. She ends up being put on this prison planet by the Coalition, which is like this government that rules over all these planets. And so when she is being dropped off on this prison planet, the guard that's dropping her off tells her to just find the strongest man that she can find to protect her, because this is the prison of nightmares, because it is just all of these people in one like huge room. Basically, there are a couple of cells, but mainly everyone is just in one space together. So that obviously is terrifying, especially for a single vulnerable woman, right? And so basically right out the gate, she makes eye contact with this man who has his own cell, and she is more than willing to basically give herself over to him for his protection. So his name is Kane, our hero, and this romance just worked. I don't know how, because obviously there's some like morally gray-ish things going on, considering that she's trading her body for Kane's protection at first, but things evolve from there, and I am in love with Claire Kent's heroes. She writes these grumpy, stoic heroes that are also incredibly sweet, and they use acts of service to show their love to the heroine. And I just eat that shit up every time. Also, this is a fairly short book. It's more of a novella. I think the audiobook was like 5 hours, and I absolutely flew through it. This made me cry at times because of how much I was just so invested with the romance. And this is kind of a terrifying book, obviously, given the premise, but it's also so beautiful and amazing. Next up, I have to bring up Eleanor and Grey by Brittany Cherry. I feel like a lot of people in my part of the romance community, at least, keep putting off reading Brittany Cherry's books because they know how emotional they are. I was the same way. There are a lot of books of hers that I definitely plan on reading, but I know that they are going to put me through the ringer, so I definitely put them off. But this is your sign that you need to pick this book up. This was absolutely incredible and next level. So as you can tell, our two main characters are Eleanor and Grey. This starts out when they're in high school. It's a friends to lovers romance, but Eleanor ends up moving away for some time because her mother is very ill with cancer, and so they decide to move to more like a beach town so that her mother can live her last few months with, you know, that beach atmosphere and the fresh air and all of that. And so basically Eleanor and Grey don't come across each other until, like, I want to say 10 years later, something like that. Eleanor is looking to get work as a nanny. She gets hired by this very wealthy family. Turns out that the father of this family is Grey. So Grey was married to this woman for a few years. They had a couple of children together. She ended up passing away in a car accident, and he absolutely blames himself for that accident and for his wife's death. So he's kind of like a husk of a person. And so we have this kind of like Grumpy Sunshine vibe coming into play because Eleanor has found ways to stay optimistic and positive throughout her life, even though she has also suffered some horrible loss throughout her life. And I am a sucker for nanny romances, and this one is just spectacular. I love the way that Eleanor worms her way into his kids' hearts, and then how they find each other again. Eleanor and Grey find each other again. It's just beautiful. I cried so much. Brittany Cherry just knows. She knows, girl, how to make you cry. Like, I sob like a baby reading her books, but they're so worth it because, yes, her books at times will rip your heart apart, but I promise it will be put back together again by the end. Next up, I want to bring up one of only 2 historical romances on this list, which is kind of surprising because I consider myself to be like a full-on historical romance girly. Like, that is the genre that I turn to if I don't know what else to read. But yeah, surprisingly, most of this list is not historical. But I have to bring up Lady Ruthless by Scarlett Scott. This is by far one of my top favorite romances that I've read this year. Definitely in my top 2 favorite romances I've read by Scarlett Scott. I adore this so much. And that is because, to me, Scarlett Scott is like the hate to love queen. She knows how to write that trope and how to write it well. So this one is about our main character. Can't remember names, of course, but basically she's kind of like a Lady Whistledown. She's been writing these anonymous memoirs from the perspective of this Earl that she truly believes killed her brother and his own wife. So the Earl's wife and the heroine's brother. Does that make sense? Because the heroine's brother and the Earl's wife were having an affair. So she truly believes that this Earl has murdered these people. So in her grief, she's writing these anonymous memoirs from his POV and publishing them. And now no one will touch this man with a 10-foot pole. But from what I remember, I think the Earl's father left the earldom in a lot of debt. So he just desperately wants to remarry for money. And so he decides to kidnap our heroine because he finds out what she's been doing. And given that she is the sister of a duke, she's got money. So he kidnaps her and blackmails her into a marriage of convenience, and it goes on from there. And just, oh my God, the hate to love dynamic in this is immaculate. The dynamic between these two is just so addicting. I remember that I could not wait to pick this book back up again whenever I would have to put it down. It's just phenomenal, and I cannot recommend it enough. I think this would be a really great book to pick up if you are looking to get into Scarlett Scott, because it is also the first book in a series. The other historical romance that I have to bring up in this video, I mean, come on. You probably knew this was gonna come up. That is The Duke Gets Even by Joanna Shupe. Now, in last year's video, I brought up The Lady Gets Lucky, which is book 2 of this same Fifth Avenue Rebels series, and I would still recommend that you start out with The Lady Gets Lucky, then read The Bride Goes Rogue, then read The Duke Gets Even, just so that you get really the full context of this group of friends and the dynamic and the different storylines going on. Though, I mean, you probably could just read this as a standalone, but I truly think you would enjoy this book and the series as a whole if you read them in order. So, this book in particular, we are finally getting Nellie and Lockwood's romance. Lockwood is a duke who is also in financial trouble, now that I'm thinking about it. So he comes to the States to find an American heiress to marry. And so this takes place during the Gilded Age in New York City. So one night, Nellie and Lockwood have this insane instant connection when they're both just swimming naked in the ocean one night. But from then on, things get very angsty and messy between these two. It seems like a romance could never really work out between the two of them because of things going on in their separate lives, basically. But this was just incredible because I truly adored these two characters as individuals and together in a relationship. You don't always get that, you know, sometimes you love the hero, sometimes you love the heroine, but when you get a book that you truly adore both the hero and the heroine, that is a special book. This book made me cry for a lot of different reasons. Also, I do want to mention that Lockwood, our hero, has a heart defect, so I thought that was very interesting representation to have in the story, and there's just so much to love. I remember I was doing a reading vlog some months back where I was reading this book and I ranted and raved about it for like 20 minutes in that vlog. So if you want to hear all of my detailed thoughts, I'll definitely link that video up in the cards above. All right, 3 books left. The next one I have to mention is Ivan by Sophie Lark. I finally read this book earlier this year, you guys, and I can't stop talking about it. Oh my God. This to me is the perfect book to read if you are looking to get into Sophie Lark's books, because this can totally be read as a standalone. It's not like most of her other books, which are a part of series, right? Like you really could just read this book and be done if you wanted to. And the pacing of this story is just chef's kiss incredible. But this is like a dark kind of suspenseful romance we have going on. We have Ivan, our hero, and our heroine is Sloane. She is an assassin who has been hired to kill Ivan, who is a mafia boss in St. Petersburg, Russia. And so as she is about to kill him in his sleep, he wakes up, they fight, and he ends up taking her captive, and he uses some very interesting methods to torture her, and it is incredible. I adore the relationship between Ivan and Sloane. I think that it truly has a unique vibe to it, and also feels epic because they're both such badass characters, and seeing the two of them fall for each other is just absolutely everything. And when I read this, I think I read it in like one sitting, which is crazy because there is no audiobook to this. At least there wasn't when I read it. And so the fact that I really sat down and read through this entire, like this is a like 250 page book, like it's a full length novel, right? And the fact that I just could not stop reading, even though I didn't have the audiobook to help me get through it, should really tell you something. I do think that I'm probably one of the last people in the community to read this, but if somehow you have not discovered Sophie Lark yet, this is the book to go with. Next up, we have Real by Kennedy Ryan. If you still have not read this book yet, which I understand because it took me a while to finally pick this up, and I don't know why, but I kept putting it off. Maybe it's because I know that Kennedy Ryan is gonna put me through it emotionally. That's probably why. But this is your sign. Pick this book up and you better get the audiobook. You better get the audiobook. Like, one of the best audiobooks I have ever listened to, because both of the narrators for the hero and heroine are perfect for their characters, but there was also music and singing involved, and that was amazing. Like, oh, there is so much to love about this story. So we have Neva and we have Cannon. Cannon is a film director. Neva is an actor. She's more of a stage actor. In the beginning, we see that she is the understudy for a lead in this Broadway show. And so she ends up going on one night and Cannon happens to be in the audience. And so he is just mesmerized by her. And so he decides that he wants to cast her as the lead in a new biopic that he is making. And the biopic is going to be centering around this jazz singer from, I believe, the 1940s, whose name was Desi Blue. And so things go on from there. There's definitely a forbidden aspect to their romance because Cannon had dated an actress before and that just blew up in his face. And so now he refuses to do so again. Also, we have lupus representation in this because Neva, our main character, has lupus. This was just stunning. From start to finish, stunning. I love that we got to read chapters from the screenplay of the biopic because that made this feel like historical fiction in some ways. The romance is beautiful, also has an epic feel to it. I was just so mesmerized reading this book. Definitely made me emotional. You know Kennedy Ryan is gonna do that, but it's just so worth it in the end. And I cannot stress enough, get the audiobook and thank me later. Last but certainly not least, we have Yours Truly by Abby Jimenez. Ugh, this was perfection. This was chef's kiss. I have read another book by this author before that was Part of Your World. I read that last year. I also really enjoyed it. I gave it 5 stars. This is next level. This has become, I think, an all-time favorite book. That's how amazing this is. I cried so much towards the end, but let's get into what this is about. So we have Brianna, yes, that is the heroine's name, and then we have Jacob, who's the hero, and they start working together in the ER. They are both doctors. So Jacob is brand new to working in this hospital, and basically he makes a very bad first impression on Brianna, and so Brianna like kind of hates his guts at first, which is kind of unfair, but I kind of get where she's coming from, especially when you learn later on in the book that she has really big trust issues with trusting men in general. But basically, Jacob is horrified that she hates him and he deals with a lot of anxiety. So he decides to write a letter to Brianna to basically explain himself. And it's just a fantastic letter. And from there, they become pen pals, and then they become friends, and then maybe something more. This is one of those books that made me swoon so much because Brianna and Jacob fall so hard for each other without having even like kissed or anything. It is a purely emotional connection. There's also a side plot going on in this story that Brianna's brother needs a kidney transplant and Jacob ends up being his kidney donor. And that also is a very emotional plot. But really what made me cry was towards the end, all of this angst between Brianna and Jacob. And like I said, Brianna dealing with her trust issues with men. I found that very relatable. I feel like this would be a really great book to read if you're just starting to get into the romance genre and you don't really know where to start. I think contemporary romances are great for beginners in general, but because of the nature of this story and just how beautiful and swoony it is, I think that this is just perfect for beginners, but also just perfect for any romance reader. All right, that's going to be it for the 10 books that you need to read before the end of 2023. I hope that you guys enjoyed this video and that you got some really great recommendations. I would love it if you guys would leave a comment down below telling me some books that you think I need to read before the end of the year, or just other people watching this video need to read. I would also love it if you would leave a like and subscribe, and I thank you so much in advance if you do, and I will see you guys in the next video. Bye!